Okay, it says we're streaming. That's always good. I hope that we truly are hot. Let me just talk to the office real quick. I'm going to take myself off the microphone for just 1 minute. Everybody, if you're joining in, stay with us. Stay with us. We're just checking to make sure all the technical issues. Uh, okay, I already got word back. It just came through. Okay, so we are live. It's working. That's fantastic. I have a great show today for everybody. And first off, you're listening to the Oracle Talk Radio Network. I am Michael Anthony of America Disclosing. This is called What's in the Skies. I have a very brilliant guest with me. And it's not just about the book. You can't put enough words into a book when you have a story and information that is as great as Michael has. High Strangeness, the book is called. Let me just blow this up. I have terrible eyes. A lifetime of alien and paranormal encounters. That's a lot to be said, and in a nutshell, to be perfectly honest with you. So you got all these nuts and bolts, and from birth till now, just stories and experiences and so much. And by the way, thank you for always having me on some other shows. So we're not new to each other. We actually know each other. We have a good relationship.
Okay.
We're friends, and I love the fact that I have friends out there that can bring on content like this. And I always wanted to be able to give you the fairest to shake as a friend to publicize your book and get the information out to people and let them know, hey, check this part of the story out. It's part of the puzzle. It's part of the missing information. And yours, has a lot of content. I know I've gone over this with you before, but there's a lot of people that probably haven't got word of who you are and what your book relates to in many ways because, when you talk and speak of strangeness, abduction, alien, contact, paranormal, it's a pretty wide spectrum, which isn't bad because I know you're trying to do the very best you can in this new world of what we call disclosure going forth. And thank you for that, by the way. Also, I do want to thank you that and you're a very humbling person. You are. You're very soft spoken. Um, I don't know how every day can go by for you as easily at times as it does because I know PTSD and all these things play such a part within it. But getting beyond all that and me sitting here rambling, thank you for being here. I appreciate you. And I want you to pretty much, if you could, give us the reason behind the book. And I already explained a little bit of that, but in your words, I think is will be most important.
Well, yeah, and thank you, Michael, and thank you for allowing me to be on as your guest.
Hey.
I mean, I always knew that I would write a book about my experiences within the paranormal and also as an alien abductee. I've been involved with this type of phenomena since birth. So, that's how I describe myself, an alien abductee from birth. And I wanted to illustrate, I wanted to basically tell people that I had these, I was having these particular experiences as a child and as a teenager. I mean, my book does focus primarily on being a young boy and up until the age, I would say, of 17, when I was having these type of experiences. And, I grew up in London during the 1970s. I was raised in a strict Roman Catholic environment. My parents were very strict, religiously strict. And for a while, I was having these experiences for a while with one of my brothers. I'm the youngest, and I was having these experiences. My brother Sean, he had some experiences with me with the Greys, what we know now as the Greys. At the time, I didn't know sort of consciously what these beings were called. Only much later on, when I started to investigate, I guess in the 1990s, coming more to terms with the fact that I was having these unusual experiences. And so, yeah, I wanted to, record it really. And I was given an opportunity, when I spoke to when I went to Flying Disc Press with Philip Mantle, who was my publisher, he gave me the opportunity, you know, to have my book published. So that's basically, you know, the reason I wanted to, you know, share these experiences with others, and also hope that, you know, at the time when where in the area where I grew up, I was very isolated. And you know, one of the unusual things about my parents is that they treated me a lot differently from my brothers, and they often kept me isolated from other people as well. But there is a twist in regards to my parents. In my book, I talk about my dad mostly, and you know, but I've discovered a lot more now that seems to answer a lot more questions. A lot of questions are answered for me in regards to what I've written about in my book. So I've discovered a lot more information. So when I go to write my second book, I will be able to fill in a lot of gaps from book one, what, you know, in this book.
Okay. So what is your earliest recall and understanding of what you were experiencing?
I would say it was probably from the age of 4 when me and my brother Sean, you know, we had a encounter with what would, you know, a daylight disc, you know, a UFO. I grew up in a schoolhouse which was set within a school grounds of a Roman Catholic school. My dad was the school keeper, so we lived on the grounds of this school. And my book focuses more or less in that particular area. My experiences happened in that house that I grew up in, my childhood home. I had lots of experiences within that house. Most of them weren't good. And in the immediate area itself of the school grounds. And it was here on one summertime when the school was, you know, it was the summertime, and the school had closed for the holidays, and me and Sean were in the grounds. I remember we were playing football, you know, like soccer, and we were kicking it to one another. And then Sean suggested to me, why don't we go for a walk around the grounds? Because there was no one around. But at the time, it was actually on a busy working day. So in the immediate area we grew up in, it was very busy with people, you know, doing work outside in warehouses. And there was a police station there, one of the largest in London. And we were walking around the school. And I remember walking to where the school hall was, you know, like the gymnasium. And I remember I was actually on the ground. I was playing with red fire ants. You know, I was quite curious about these particular ants. And Sean was walking up these set of steps that led up to a sort of concrete platform. And I remember him calling out to me and saying, you know, what's that? What is it? And when I got up from you know, looking at these ants, I could see him staring up at the sky, and he was pointing. And I remember walking up the steps towards him and then looking in the direction of his finger where he was pointing. And we could see what would be, you know, a metallic type UFO just basically sitting in the sky. And it seemed to be like moving, wobbling, you know. And I remember at that moment, both of me and Sean, we actually entered into, you know, like an altered state of consciousness. You know, we were like what the you know, British researcher Jenny Randalls coined the phrase the Oz factor, where you enter into this almost cocoon where you're separated from the environment around you. So it seemed like we had missing time as well, because at the end, at that moment, everything around us just went quiet. So we were in a busy area, you know, of London. So there was we couldn't hear any sounds. There was just this, you know, eerie silence. And it was just me, Sean, and this object in the sky. And the object seemed to be coming closer to us. And then at that moment, I suddenly become aware and was, removed from this bubble, so to speak. And I looked across at Sean, and he was still sort of in this sort of, like zombie state. And it was only when I kept on calling his name that he snapped out of it. But when we looked, this UFO had vanished from the sky. And then it was at that time I just felt panicked, like something had happened, something that wasn't good. And I remember, running from this area, from this spot we were in, to go back to, the house. My mum and dad were in the house at the time. And I remember Sean was following behind me. And I mean, every time we were running, I was looking up at the sky to see if I could see this object, maybe following us. But right. I couldn't see anything. I was quite terrified, really, because I know something unusual had happened to us, but I couldn't really at that age explain what it was. But and I remember running in. We both run into the door and startled. I remember we startled our mum, and my dad told us off, because he wasn't expecting us to do that. But the unusual thing about it is that when we were trying to explain to him what happened, he didn't tell us that we were, go away, or it's your imaginations. He seemed to just sort of go with it like it was something that he'd seen himself. It seemed to be quite normal what we were saying to him. And he just told us to go out and play and just stay close to the house. And I mean, it wouldn't be the first time that that me and Sean would say these type of things to him, that we'd experienced something. And more me than anyone else in the household had these experiences. But it always seems to be, that it was an acceptance that, these things happen. And so it wasn't until much later on that it sort of, when I was writing my book and I was thinking about these things and, the peculiar things my dad would say, or, with other people that have had these experiences, the parents normally dismiss it, don't they? But my parents didn't seem to do that. They seem to accept.
Yeah, it's the boogeyman theory to them in a way, maybe, because you don't know. I mean, you can't always judge what one's thinking, but yeah, sure. You know what though, you're hitting the nail on the head in a way. Things that how I felt my same experience kind of went, where you're like trapped from something. You could yell to somebody, they don't hear you. I went through that. You get the heebie-jeebies in a certain way because it's like, oh my, what did I get? For me, it was, oh my, what did I get myself into? I really wasn't trying to call anything in, but for some odd reason, it happened. And here I'm the adult, I'm the father, I'm the grandfather, I'm the grown-up, and here I am sitting there experiencing it. But there's commonalities between what you said and even how it was for me. So I can appreciate all of what you're describing, because people don't know until they know. And not always do you have that type of support. So, there's a lot of love I have for you and anybody else that encounters things. We all have different types of things that we encounter. Did you perceive this at that age, or as you were growing up, as this normal of paranormal was all a part of a system, like a natural system environment that just occurs?
Yeah, I think at that age, I think I did. I thought at one time everyone was having these experiences, but it was only.
Doesn't it make you wonder, Michael, that why we all, in fact, in ways, it is exactly like that? Because in dream states, how many children do not have a dream about the boogeyman under the bed or in the closet? These types of things. And do they get that because it's activation of TV and mind control of delivery of certain subject matter, and it just adapts in? Or is it more of a synthetic environmental type of AI technology that's actually implanting thoughts, guiding hypnotic thoughts of what you may think is reality is not really current reality. You understand where I'm coming from? I don't know.
Yeah,
Did that make sense to you? Okay, cool.
it does make sense.
What are
Yeah.
your thoughts? What are your thoughts on something like that, being that it's been so repetitive for you?
You know, I think a lot of children are quite sensitive to, you know, these particular types of phenomena. You know, I think you're going to see a lot more, you know, people coming up with experiences, you know, to people outside of our communities that seem really strange. Um, it's difficult to say, really. I mean, you know, with the technology, I think more and more kids are having these type of experiences with technology. They're being, you know, pushed in a certain way to experience these things.
Right.
Um,
See, that's in my heart and in my mind. Not that I'm saying that's the claim of the facts, because we don't really know. Maybe our military knows things, definitely, and maybe
they do.
the science behind what they have is why we're seeing a lot of the things that we are now seeing. Certain characteristics of AI and technologies going in the directions that they are. But so jumping away from that, and I do agree with you that I think there's something to a picture of how this all works, because so many are seeing things in the sky. So many are dealing with other type of paranormal experiences, and it's almost like it's a guidance chip. It's not for everybody, but it's for certain few. Maybe the ones who are more sensitive to and can be reached easier or more easily. I don't know, but so not to take us out of where we are now, but to further into your life. Do you think this was the start of them um, extending some type of programming that put you on the path, or did it have more of a intent of getting you on the path, placing you within it, and guiding you through certain things to keep you within it?
I think from a very early age, I was sensitive to, you know, different types of energy. You know, I was able to see, you know, the human aura. I was able to manifest. You know, if I thought something, it would more or less occur, or if I wanted something, it would appear literally within less than 24 hours. So, and you know, I had the ability as well at a very young age to move objects without touching them. And I was tested for this as well by a group of doctors. I was taken somewhere by my dad, and I remember being tested. So I was able to use telekinesis
Mm-hmm.
to move objects. And I'm not sure what the outcome of this was, because I wasn't informed of being that age. But you know, I did have other experiences, and specific abilities as a child, and you know, there was other things that I was able to do. I was able to open up portals as well. This is something that I've become aware of much later on in my life, and as a result of other experiences that I had, that I at the time I didn't remember. Which is, you know, it goes into you know, another story that you know about, Michael.
Yes, I
Um,
do. I do.
but the interesting thing is that, you know, when I was having a lot of activity at this particular house, you know, there was obviously portals that were opening and closing in the house itself for a lot of these beings and entities and other um, forces to come through when they wanted access to me. But you know, it was only recently that I discovered that it was actually me that opened a lot of these portals, but I wasn't even aware of that I was doing that. And I was doing it as a result of trauma that was happening to me. So and it had been recorded from an early age, um, you know, by military sources, that I had the ability in my DNA to do this.
Wow.
um,
Yeah,
and and you'll find, sorry, and you'll
No,
find
you're good.
you'll find a lot of people in our field, Michael, have the ability to open up these particular type of portals. It's just that a lot of us are not aware that, or we don't remember that we can do this. But the military do have the ability to access at a deeper level than civilian scientists. They know much more. They know a lot more about our DNA and what's hidden within it. And it's from what I've discovered about myself. I've got quite an interesting background and in regards to these things. And they were able to determine with me at a very early age that I had these abilities, and rather than I use them, they isolated me from those abilities, and they were able to access them themselves when they wanted to use me, and they still do that to this day.
That's where I was headed, and I'm glad you finished on that note. Yeah, this is like the intensity part of. So, are you as powerful by mind now as you were as a child? Because we always hear the mind and the younger ages are the sponge. Were you able to hold on to being able to move objects and open portals even till now to this day? And if you are, and because other people could use you through control, is it because you're one of the elites of the military tagged? That, in other words, you have that foreign object in your body?
There are various, there are, many of us within these communities. We have these objects within our bodies, but like implants can also be in. They can be placed in the mind as well. This is the reason. I have DID. I have a dissociative identity disorder, which is alters, but my alters are being created intentionally by the military to create military alters that are programmed and used on various military projects, and a lot of people like us are we have these alters accessed and created when we're younger. Mine were created when I was 3 to 4 years old, and one of the things that when I talk about on podcasts, and I often talk about alters and disassociation, because we have that natural in our minds when we encounter something, especially as a child, that's uncomfortable. Our mind will step in and automatically, separate what we experienced and create, in a way, like a screen memory with a different script to
Yes.
safeguard the child until the child is at a stage in its life where it's able to, start to filter it out, to experience it in baby steps, so it doesn't hurt the child, but it safeguards it. But with our particular alters, they're created through trauma. So the child may be beaten, tortured, and a lot of other things that I don't need to mention here. But in order to create a deliberate split in the mind of the child, to create a disassociation in the mind, so it splits away from the one. So I would be described as the alter that holds the body. So I'm the front alter that holds a script that places me in this world um, with this script around us. So people often think that we have one mind, one consciousness. We don't. Many of us within these fields, we have hundreds of alters that can be in one body at one time, and these alters are programmed. They're deliberately programmed by the military so that they can carry out tasks for them. In an example would be, if I was sent somewhere to see something, and to as a spy, so to speak, it would be one of my alters that would come forward and hold this body in order to carry out that task. So then the alter then would go back inside, and at the back of me, it basically is placed within almost like an holographic system, where the altars are kept. Some people describe it as, similar to the symbol of the flower of life. It's the, and what you call, in the Bible, like, the many mansions of God, so to speak. It's like doorways where these altars are placed. It's a very sophisticated and in some ways complicated subject, but it's a topic that I often talk about now, because it's one of these topics that is quite controversial in regards to how the altars are created and for what purposes. The purposes that they're created is not good. We're carrying out tasks for the military, not the military, the mainstream military that we see. These are on black ops, above ultra type projects. So
Right.
so if an author come forward and I was given a task, and I was looking at saying something that I shouldn't be looking at, so to speak, that author would then go back into my system in the back of me, and if I was then questioned, I wouldn't have no memory of this. I just wouldn't. But that author would. So then, when that author is required, the programmer or handler that is controlling that particular altar of me, it would call that altar up. So often what you have is almost like a sat nav in the mind. You have an area code that the handlers or the programmer will call forth, and so that altar will come forth in me, and it will then give that information to that person. I say person, they're actually monsters, these particular individuals. They're narcissists, they are psychopaths that are basically hired by these agencies to carry out this work, and they're very good at it as well. They're extremely sophisticated.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think they blend into society as well, not just through military handpicking or project materials of like Montauk and Monarch and all these
Sure.
these things there that we know it do exist out there. But one might say that there's a technology that's also frequencing towards Hollywood and music and some of these other graphic things that we're
Sure.
seeing, that these people are truly not under their own control, but being mind altered and have no idea. So that takes me back to the theory of the muons and things that are claimed to be coming in these atmospheric automatons that we now know are networking all around us, in a certain way. They carry an intelligence of frequency, but are not of an intelligence of natural, but synthetically put together, made, and created. And that's part of the big battle of what our military is also fighting. But I think at the same time, that's sort of the blend that we have that's going on as how the alters and altrists work. Because there are altrists as well. A lot of people don't bring them up. They always look at like the more masculine side of it, but not the feminine. But they're on both. They're on both playing forms. Or is it the technology just in somehow interfacing with them to create the project that they want to place you within, because they have that need for you now?
Well, obviously, with the creation of the altars, there is a lot of technology that is used, in controlling, the assets that go on these projects. I'm a veteran of the SSP, the Secret Space Program, of futuristic soldier projects. So, and but what they need for these projects is children. They need children, and most of the children that they select, I mean, in the earlier days, like Michael, with with Montauk, they were choosing in the earlier stages of that project, they were taking people, adults from the streets. A lot of them were veterans of the Vietnam War, that are just out on the streets. And then you had the FBI type finders that come and looked for particular people. But at that time, I don't believe at that time they were, it was in early stages for them. in a learning stage. So they were taking people and offering them food and drink and a place to sleep. And of course, you know, if you're out on the streets, you're going to say yes to that. But what a lot of these vets didn't understand is that they would be facing something much more dangerous than anything they would have seen on any battlefield.
Yeah.
And they would never leave that place alive. Unfortunately, most of them perished because of the extremities and the technology that they faced. You know, they wouldn't survive.
Yeah.
And it was very much a case of, you know, trial and error. And, you know, there must have been thousands, hundreds of thousands even of adults and children, you know, runaways,
Yeah.
missing children that were placed in these projects because they were basically, they wouldn't be missed.
Yeah, they're the test dummies, even though they're beautiful human beings. And yeah, you're right, absolutely. I mean, we know that there were so many graphic things going on beyond the facts of what we're talking about. But while we're kind of like around them, the what I used to that I use a term called the Frankenstein experiments, and the early the Germans in the early under the Third Reich were actually trying already to through plastic surgical means make creations and utilize humans to create unhuman looking features or to
Sure.
make man woman and woman man. I mean, these things were going on. Not only that, bestiality of using animals and
Sure.
you know, to try to alter certain things. So they were looking for that early super soldier in different ways and how far they could take that down that rabbit hole. And I know that you've seen and you've experienced immensities of a lot of different things throughout your life. And the one thing that I also look at is when the mind control that our military does go through when they're placed in these situations where they get the license to kill or be killed. And when they're actually like, you know, what is this all for? When you look at the reality of everything as we can, because you and I are from two different worlds, but yet we're like brothers. We've
We are.
always had a connection. It's always been tight between us. And, you know, there's this other element. And I'm still in this other element, stuck in a way, but not stuck, just thinking in my own mind, has not everything been a mind controlled system? Just they're now, they in the earlier parts of your life where these things were starting to be, when they were starting to be developed, they were starting to use out of the box technologies and trying to enhance and do all that weird strangeness. Is that part in your book that we're talking about? Is that part of what your book reflects to?
the book the book doesn't hold a lot of that information we're just speaking about, but the book does allude to the possibility at the time that there was military involvement in a lot of my abductions with the Greys, sometimes with the Greys, and other times I think it was more a case of the military pretending to be the Greys in order, you know, so that the Greys get the blame. But there was, you know, it's you know, I would be termed also my lab a military abductee,
Yeah.
but you know, I describe myself more now as a breakaway my lab. So although I'm still involved now as an asset in many of these projects, you know, some of them I'm aware of, others I'm not, and but you know, they are I, at the same time, because of more of an awareness of my fragmented memories,
Mm-hmm.
I'm also in a position now where I'm more of a pain in the ass to them more than anything, because as you know, like you know, I am a military, you know, for the SSP whistleblower and part of the growing disclosure community. So that this is what I do as a public speaker. I speak out about these experiences to throw light on it and also to educate and bring an awareness to those people that are not in our communities, you know, and to show them there's a lot happening behind the scenes, and you know what the military hide behind the national security, when in fact it's not a case of national security. It's more of a case of criminality against the public or the general population, for control.
Yeah.
And we want to highlight that, and we want to bring it up. And also we're trying to push forward the fact that we as children have been used on these projects in, the most horrific ways, that most adults on most battlefields will never see what we went through.
Do you think that nefarious negativity that goes into the atmosphere is feeding to something who supplies these technology ideas for the militaries and that trade-off system that was allegedly had taken place within several countries, not just
Sure.
under Truman Eisenhower, but we're talking about other countries as well, because it seems that there is technology, and also not just technologies, but other facets of entities that are in touch with heads of government and military, as if there's a platform of different scenarios all working, intermingling. Because you can't give a gun to one side of the war to only one side. The war will be over tomorrow. Everybody needs an equal diversity of protection so we can continue. And that creates the negativity. It creates more death. It creates more recall to come in, because we need soldiers. It's the patriotic thing to do. And they keep flowing the chart and filling the empty spots with names who have come in. And it forms a source of negative energy everywhere.
I mean, this thing, like with the, what we call, in the the SSP community, they refer to it as super soldiers,
Correct.
But the old phenomena around super soldiers. I use the term futuristic soldier rather than super soldier, but this thing is not. It isn't a modern. It's not a modern project. It's been going on for centuries.
Mm-hmm.
We had different types of soldiers from the past that would be considered elite, but they would also be considered to be super soldiers, because of their abilities and what they were able to do above those of the average soldiers. So I think, and it's just in modern terms, it's just become much more developed technologically, in regards to how they control people. But this again, with the alters, the super soldiers are also created. The children can be placed inside avatar type bodies, which are adult humans or adult bodies that are
Right.
built for warfare. So the child can then occupy these particular bodies. And as I was saying to someone the other day, you might, if you had an adult next to you, you may have a child inside that body. And it seems quite, it would seem quite, amazing to some people, or even impossible. It's not impossible. The military have a lot of technologies that are, the general population would be amazed at. Unfortunately, a lot of these technologies, as you know, Michael, are used for nefarious purposes against people, when in actual fact, if we reverse that and use these technologies, we could do amazing things in the world.
Yeah.
To help people. But unfortunately, often is the case, the world is controlled by the psychopaths.
It is, and that's why I was referring as to how the negativity can work. If there's certain bodies of people on this planet that can keep these types of narrations going forth, I'm trying to keep this crisp and clean here. They're getting a negative outcome from it, no matter how you look at it. So you can embed anything good, but inside it somewhere, the devil's birth has begun. And that's exactly where they hide it. So our military are the proud, the ones that but the internal side of it is not so to be proud of, and their actions of what they have done for whatever reasons, even if they feel that they're doing it for the better good of humanity, it may never be that, but yet they don't give up on it. I hope times change. Unfortunately, I don't know if we'll ever rid the problem completely. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, do we have a shot at some point, from everything that you have observed and experienced, that something will change in the future?
I do believe that there's a lot of hope for human beings and on the planet. And I do believe, we're going forward with what we're doing. We're all trying to do our best to get this information out, to force the hand of those who are actually holding these projects together.
Right.
I think it's going to be difficult, though, even with disclosure. I think a lot of people think, sometimes it's going to be easy. It's not going to be easy, because at the end of the day, they won't even admit the fact that there are UFOs flying around the skies of the Earth, and some of these, obviously populated by non-humans, but there are also a lot of the craft are also populated by the military that have reversed engineered these craft. And the thing is, what ET has learned about humans is that we're very good at what we do. We're masters of warfare. Not even though you've got ETs that have been around for thousands and thousands of years, humans are masters of warfare, something that a lot of ETs are not. ETs have technology, they don't have the same skill sets on battlefields as humans do.
Right.
And also,
don't try to tell one a joke; they won't get it.
and also another thing is that we're very good at building. We're good at building technology, and ET has come to understand that we're in some ways we're better than them at design and creation of these type of military type technologies. So
Right.
a lot of the time, you may find that in these military type DUMBs, deep underground military bases, it's actually the ETs that come to us for help when they want something, and not the other way around. It's not always a case of how long you've been around. It's a case of what skill sets you have,
Yeah.
And we're good at that.
So we definitely are in ways assisting them.
Yeah, a lot of the time, a lot of what goes on in these underground bases, it is very much that we are helping each other. Everyone in a way has their own agenda. We talk about the secret space program, but the United States is not the only one with the SSP, the secret space program. The French have got one. The Italians have got one. In many cases, they all work together, but in
Yeah.
other cases, they have their own ones that they don't want each other to know about.
Yeah.
And
Are you familiar with Group 583?
I'm not, no.
It's the logistics to of the command center divisions through the military, special ops, black ops, that actually control the 58 countries
Okay.
within the retrievals and contacts.
Okay, like you mean the ET retrievals?
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
like blue berets, is it?
Just to some degree, a little bit different though. But the United States does control the headquarters of all
Sure.
the 58.
Okay, that's
Yeah, that's
interesting.
why United States normally, if there's a retrieval problem,
Yeah.
we are definitely called in, even if it's in another country, to go in and clean up whatever by utilizing a military presence's equipment, or us having to actually get things over there, depending upon the sophistication of what's being dealt with. Have
Yeah,
you experienced anything in that environment?
well, they're all part of that, aren't they? It's all,
Yeah,
these are all part of the SSP as well. They all work together in order to achieve the same objective and to keep that secrecy away from the public.
yeah,
Um, you know, um, but going forward, I think we do have a shot in regards to changing things. But as I said, it'll be difficult in regards to disclosure, though. Because they won't in a way they won't come out with the fact that that ET is on the Earth now, and there are ETs here. It's not nothing new. It's not that they're visiting here or they're coming here. They've always been here. They never left. It's just that we have not seen them. But they have deep underground bases, and they've had these bases long before the human military had them. And unfortunately, people may not like to hear it, but most of those that fly around these skies, the ones that are ET, they don't like human beings. They've been at war with human beings since before biblical times, and this war is still continuing to this day. And now we have the military element as well involved, so they all want something from it. These ETs want full control of this planet, but so do those that are involved in these military projects. They want full control of this planet, along with every single soul. And people say, I'm just, why would they be interested in me? I'm just Joe Blogs in the street doing going about my life. It's because you have a soul, that's why, and they're interested in that.
Do you think, because I think I hear it in your explanation, in your terminology, that they are actually in control of us in many ways?
I mean, I've been involved in these projects for a long time, and some of them I've just become aware of a little while ago, because, as I said, with trauma, the fragmentations and so forth. But I think all of us, to some degree, are, Michael. The whole population, I think, is involved in some form of mind control.
Right.
And it'd be interesting to see, when the whole of the population that mind control begins to break, what is over the fence, away from that mind control. What it is. What is it that they don't want you to see? I think it'd be very interesting from a collective consciousness of the planet, what it is that they've been hiding away from people's eyes and ears, and what they don't want them to see. And I think it'll be the holy grail, really, when people become aware that there's a lot out there that they just don't know and they don't see, and a lot of things that will be very good for them. We know that on a lot of these bases, especially in Antarctica, they have, like med beds that could help people recover from many, many illnesses, but they don't share them with the public. Imagine if you had some of these inside some of the hospitals, and people coming in with minor illnesses or ones that are, believed to be with no cure, when we know for a fact there is a cure for every single one of these illnesses, and they have it, and they just don't share it with the population. But that's another thing with disclosure, that they would have to disclose that they have this type of technology that can help many, many people that have passed away, unfortunately, with their loved ones that have suffered and undergone these treatments with these false, given these false medicines that we know doesn't help them. Sometimes it pushes them further along where they want them to go, but they have this technology and they're keeping it hidden. And in the deep underground military bases, they do have this technology hidden away that could help many, many people to to heal, to recover, or even slow down their illnesses.
Right.
And so I think people in the disclosure community as well, this is another thing, is what it is you want them to disclose. There's a hell of a lot of information that the government or the hidden government needs to reveal to the public. And I think it's going to be difficult for them to do that, because they're then putting themselves basically a noose around their neck, because they have to then not only admit that things are happening, but also admit to the fact that they've been kidnapping children and trafficking children into these projects. And and it's not just the case that a boy or girl goes into these projects. It's what happens to them whilst they're in those projects. I mean, I'm not going to share with you the horrific details of what does happen to those children the lucky ones perish, but they are ones that carry on as adults throughout their lives. And we have handlers, we have programmers, and and you are under some sort of control with these. But they would have to admit to that many of these missing children that are often placed on these cartons of milk in the United States, or posters up. Unfortunately, they go on these projects. They go below the ground and they're on
Yeah.
these projects. And when they go into these projects, they'll never be seen again. They'll never be seen again. They'll be used, um, you know, and there's lots of different ways that these children can be used, but they are used, and they'll never leave them bases, never.
Yeah.
And this is what needs to be highlighted. I'm not saying that every single child goes onto those projects, but most of them do.
Yeah.
And you see this in the national forests as well. When children go missing, even adults, they go into these military bases, and we know also a lot of children and adults are trafficked through portals that are below below the water. So and they're trafficked through these portals into these bases because it's easier to do that, where because a lot of the time you don't want to be seen, and this is one way to do it. And so these locations as well, they need to be highlighted. And the thing is, when you got and this is another reason why whilst it's difficult to have disclosure to some degree, because it means they're giving up what their agenda is, and that's to do with control of the population. And I don't think they're going to give that up easy. And it's not just the human element as well. A lot of the ETs really have the last word. What goes on this planet, So
Yeah.
there's a lot of other factors involved. I'm not saying it's impossible, because nothing's impossible. We just got to forge ahead and keep pushing and pushing until we can. Even if we get a little bit of disclosure, it then can get people to ask those questions that need to be asked, and force their hand to open up to more and more. Because if they're admitting to something, there's going to be more, and there's going to be a lot more coming out.
Yeah.
But we need to remove these people, really. I mean, again, I say people, but they're not. They are definitely monsters, really. And even I've had many encounters with the various ETs, especially like the greys, and there are different types of greys, but the ones I speak of are the ones that are that control the abduction programs. So there are different types of greys, but so not wanting to offend anyone that's a contactee and they have positive experiences, because the positive experiences do happen, and there are positive ETs, but unfortunately there's not many of them on the planet. And I think you can see this from what's occurring on the planet. If that was the case,
Right.
People talk about the Prime Directive. The Prime Directive is bull. It's nonsense. The Prime Directive is nonsense. It's just that it's not the right time, I think, for a lot of these positive energies to intervene into the affairs of human beings. And in actual fact, why do we want them to interfere? Because you think that they've got superior technology to us. Nonsense. I think we need to do it ourselves. That way, then it doesn't give other types of ET races that thinking that we can't handle our affairs, and that they need to do that for us. That's where we have control.
Yeah. And we do need to regather, collect, and we somehow become more involved. And a lot is happening to help that, but as you said, we're not nearly near the point of changing it in this moment. I do see a future in my mind where things like that will occur. I think, and I'm trying to keep the big P out of this, which I'll refer to the P equals the political content. Is Trump is there now to guide, to create, and to unify a structure to be able to handle this. And I think Vance will be the one delivering on the advancements of the technologies and so forth. And I think he will do that before his fourth year of the first term back that he will have, and maybe his final term. It depends how that works out. There's other subject matter that may be able to create a different analogy there, but sticking to the principle of fact of what we know, I do foresee that, and I do see a change. I also, in my mind, see a change of multiple people on day one being eliminated as far as their positions. Positions are going to change, and I think these are the directives of positivity that the same that we had in America here on November 5, 2024. The element of positivity went in a worldwide phenomena. And it seemed like the world just changed in many ways. People's attitudes changed. People were cheerful. And it just wasn't here in America. It just wasn't the stock market. There was a lot of things that were taking precedent and taking place. So I do believe everything you're saying is part of the system that we will head into, but it's going to have to take a bit of time to gravitate to get and be able to comprehend on how to do it with the power that we have to eliminate it from what we're seeing, from the 411 to the abduction 911. 411, you can look at it as being the hands of the people, but the abduction 911 is actually the involvement of the ET. I've tried to talk to David Politis about this, but he's never returned any of my messages. Maybe one day he will. And I would love to have that conversation with him, because he's taken a radical turn on his objective of thought, because he wasn't where we are now and where we have been with this through this. But he is coming around to it, and I think he's gravitating and understanding it more, which I'm excited about, because he has the voice that matters. And I think what we cannot do, he will be able to participate in to help us do. Because it's going to take just you, me, John, Paul, Mary, Peter. It doesn't matter. It's going to take unity and the people to cure it.
That's right. We bring in the right people. I mean, he's an excellent, investigator, I think. Very, committed and passionate to, discovering what's happened with these missing people. In the forests. But, it is about that. It's about bringing in other people and working together in unity. And again, a lot of these projects as well that are aimed at the general population, it is about fear. It is about lowering their energies, and it is about making them feel that they're weaker than what they are, and it is good to have that positive approach. It's good to have some hope. And that hope in believing that we will eventually succeed in bringing everything to light and dealing with the people that are being involved, even if they're not human. Everyone will need to be dealt with in some form or another. But going for it, I do believe we will succeed. It will take time and it will take effort, but no battle is won without that. So, and people should have that positive approach and know whatever's happening in the world, even though it's bad, and a lot of the time it is bad, there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I would agree. So, all right, we kind of went off course, which is perfectly great. I mean, I love it. I really do. And I hope everybody else that listens to the content, whether it's now or later. And I also want to remind you, to everybody out there, thank you for listening to the Oracle Talk Radio Network. I am Michael Anthony, America Disclosed. This is Michael Kameron. I am Michael Anthony. This is What's in the Skies. And I'm going to go back to What's in the Sky question here. How many ETs do you know of? I mean, that you could actually say that you are aware of, without putting you on the spot or worrying about any dotted line signature materials.
Well, but the thing is for me, I have many of us in the SSP, we have our own genetics, that are involved with ET in regards to our past lifetimes and so forth. but I've had encounters with the infamous MIBs. I had them when I was aged 4. And obviously the greys, the reptilians, lyrians. You can go into all of these. I mean, I'm aware of some of them, and obviously I've had contact with others in regards to my military abductions. But at the moment, I try to just concentrate on the ones that I've been involved with my abductions, and the ones that interact with the military. So I don't really have much to say on that, though. Really,
That's okay. That's okay. I appreciate it and respect it.
because because a lot of the time, in regards to my book, I mean, my book is about primarily the abductions by the Greys. But these days, with my public speaking, mine is more now focused very much on the military side of things. These projects, because these are the ones that are, in some ways, a lot of the things that happened in the book is also to do with this hidden element in my life with the military. I discovered that a lot of my medical records that I have are held, and military records from going into these projects are held at the NSA base in Pine Gap in Australia. So this is something I've discovered, where a lot of my information is stored on the computers there. They also have it in paper stored below the ground, but it's much more difficult to get hold of that.
Yeah.
So
America, the influence of all the countries in the world, the world countries. All right. So keeping it kind of around the information of the book, do you have anything in there as far as in your abductions, or do you have recall of how, and if they did any type of human harvesting of you, taking samples of you, skin cells, blood, uh, anything that in the early parts of what we hear about through John Lear or these foreign objects, has everything checked out okay for you, or do you have any recall of any of these moments where in the abduction you were, you as a person were actually being tampered with?
yeah, I mean, I've had one of the ones I had. I explained in my book that I had an encounter which was again where I sort of come aware more that the military were involved, as well as the ETs, like the Greys, with my abductions, which would then, I guess, be a MyLab experience. And that was one where they were, at that time, it was quite a traumatic one for me. It was in 1984. I just turned 16. My dad had just passed into spirit, and but I had one there where I was visited, and I had two Greys. One of them had a blue, wand-like object that was placed into my mouth whilst I was, I was paralyzed. And they were doing something then with my mouth, which, as I explained in the book, I could actually feel my mouth burning with this particular device. And in my head, I was actually shouting out for help, but these particular things, they just carried on with what they were doing. Either they didn't have no emotions, or they were some sort of robot that was just carrying out a task, regardless of how I felt. But when they'd finished, it was actually then that I could see standing in the corner what would be described as a United States Air Force officer in full dress, just watching from the outline of what they were doing. And I had a lot of the time as well with my abductions. I started to have the nosebleeds, and I've got lots of marks on my body, burns, and some of these where I visited the hospitals. I got one on my left thigh that is literally when I got this. I don't have no memory of how I got it, but this happened to me when I was coming home from work one night. At the time, I was working in the restaurant, and I was coming home in the early hours of the morning, and I was so tired from a long shift that instead of going to bed, I lay on the sofa, and then when I woke up in the morning time, and I was having a shower, I had a hole in my leg, literally, which you could put two fingers inside the wound, and it was bleeding. I was in a lot of pain. I didn't know how I got it. I didn't have it before that. And I went into like a accident and emergency, and when they took a look at it, they were like really shocked to see how deep it was. And they said to me that it's strange, but they said to me, it looks like, to them, they were saying that you had a laser pushed through your leg. But they said to me, I had my jeans on at the time, and they said it would have burnt through them, and you would have been screaming in pain. But I'd never felt a thing, and they couldn't explain it. But that went on to my medical records. But then a week later, I had another one burn on the same leg, just a little bit below this one. But this one healed quicker and I still got the scar to this day there, which is like two marks, almost like two finger marks. And another time, a friend of mine, I remember a friend of mine telling me, when they were looking at my back, they could see a mark or a symbol on my back, and I didn't know what they were talking about, and I said, "What do you mean that there's a mark there?" And they thought at first it was like a tattoo, but and they took a picture of it, but when they took the picture, it didn't develop, of course, it never does. And it was like it was a symbol like of Mazda,
Right.
the symbol of Mazda. But what I found out later on is that what some of us have holographic implants, and these can be seen when the light hits in a certain way. And they're markings that they place on your body. I'm not sure what they're for though, these particular ones. Another time, I had something happen to me when I woke up from my sleep, and I was standing in the bathroom, and I was at the sink, and I remember when I was just about to brush my teeth, a small metal object fell out of my mouth, and it was just like a very, very tiny, like that, probably smaller than that, perfect square. And when I didn't know what the hell it was, and I luckily I didn't have the I had the stopper in the sink, the plug in the sink, so to speak, and it was so small. But when I looked at it with a magnifying glass, it literally had symbols on it, almost like a circuitry board, and it had wires coming out from it, really tiny wires. And then I actually went to a ufologist who was an investigative researcher. I think he's passed now. And I took this little object with me, and I explained a little bit about my being an abductee and so forth. And he looked at it with a much more powerful magnifying glass, and he said, you're absolutely correct. He said it's got symbols on it, on this particular, and he said the same thing. It's like a circuit board, very, very tiny circuit board, and it had the little wires. And he said to me, it just fell out of your mouth. And I said, yes. I said there was no bleeding. I couldn't see where it come from. And he asked me if he could pass it on to somebody in the Ministry of Defence that he knew. And I said, yeah, of course. I was a bit, at that time I was a bit gullible then, I guess. I shouldn't have done, but I just wanted to see if I could find answers, to what was happening to me. I didn't have anyone around me that could help me. We didn't have social media as we have it now, like Facebook or anything like this. So it would be just contacting people by word of mouth. And then anyway, so I waited a little while, and then a little while later, I contacted him to see if he found out any information. And he told me, unfortunately, the person that he gave it to has now vanished from the MOD, and he can't trace him, and that object has gone with him.
Hmm.
So, this was, slightly unusual as well.
Yeah.
And so I was frustrated because I wanted some answers, and I just didn't get them. They weren't forthcoming. And you have this a lot of the time with this type of, these type of experiences. It's really hard a lot of the time to find information or even people, to talk to you about it.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Roger Lear describes certain findings of removals and intelligence where
Sure.
trying to get the things that would actually move in the body as if it was under self of some other type of control, knowing that it was part of a removal about to take place. And, they were difficult to remove, but they did have success, I believe, in 9 to 10 cases. Um, Part of what you said might have been in your mouth. Now check this out. Now, in the incision from the laser, there is something called, okay, that the military has a heated obsidian scalpel. Now, what this does, it cauterizes at the same time they are cutting, so there's no bleeding. This is exactly what we think, at least I think, and a few constituents that you would probably get along with just wonderfully. The cattle and horses,
Yeah.
all that. How everything is cut so clean, so
Mm.
clean. And this may, in fact, because of the blue thermal lighting, um, could have been that process that you were going through being used on you. And as you said, when it did fall out, there was no blood.
No.
Or did you were you able to locate any place of implant of like anything stand out after that happened?
I mean, when it happened, I was in a state of terror at the time, and obviously was guided to sleep downstairs. That's where it happened. I was actually going to bed, and I had a thought come in my head. You don't want to go upstairs. Just come downstairs. Just come downstairs. And I had this feeling in my head, and I was walking up the steps, and I was holding onto the banister. I was in the early hours of the morning when this happened, and um, everyone else was in bed, and this was in my childhood home. And but as I got closer to my bedroom door, I decided then to turn around and go back downstairs. And then when I went back downstairs, it was in the summertime. It was really hot, and I then lay down on the sofa or the couch, and I remember closing my eyes because I was really tired at the time. I'd actually been out into the school grounds, and even in them days, I used to meditate, and I was meditating at the time. But whilst I was outside, I had that peculiar feeling that you get when the greys are around, so to speak. It's almost like the hairs at the back of your head or your neck stand up, and it was a feeling of like I was being watched from above or in the darkness surrounding me. But I carried on, and then when I went back, that's when that process happened. But then when I was laying on the sofa, I closed my eyes, and it was then immediately that I sensed a feeling of dread, a feeling of terror, and
Mm-hmm.
I knew then there was something going to happen. And at that moment, I tried to quickly get up from the sofa, or the couch, to rush to the door to get out. But
Right.
I found though I wasn't able to. I was paralyzed.
Oh,
So
okay.
so my body was paralyzed, but I could move my eyes. You often find this when your body experiences paralysis, you can still move your eyes. So although they can control your body, I don't believe they can control that part of your brain. What controls your eyes. But that's why you often find that these particular beings, they stay out of your view. They don't want to be seen a lot of the time. And then I remember then that something took hold of my head and pushed it back. And I could feel though the hand wasn't human. It had long fingers with claws. And then I had a grey in front of me, but this grey was floating towards me, and it had this blue, what looked like a wand-like instrument in its hand, and my mouth was forced open, and it was doing something in my mouth. You know, at the time I couldn't see the military guy. He was out of view. I didn't know he was there. I was too much concentrating. I was actually speaking to these in my head, and I was telling them, you know, I was swearing, and I was telling them, I'll kill you if I get free from this. I'll break your neck. I'll kill you. You know, and that's my thoughts there. Obviously, I didn't. I was still paralyzed, and I could hear. Yeah, add some sound to it, but I could feel it burning in my mouth. I could actually feel the pain, and then I was thinking, you know, what they're doing, what's going on, what damage have they done to my mouth? And then eventually, when it stopped, and they went to a part of the room where I could see them, and it was almost like they were communicating together. Then this American, you know, this what looked like an American Air Force officer was there watching. He walked towards them, and they vanished. And then it was just a few moments after that the paralysis, you know, was removed from me, and I immediately, you know, I stumbled to my feet, but my legs were shaky. It's almost like, you know, and I was quite weak. And but as soon as I was able to, I got to a mirror and I was looking immediately in my mouth. My head was actually, you know, I could feel a lot of energy in my head as well. And when I looked in my mouth, I was quite shocked to see that there was no marks there. There was no. I expected there to be blood, to be burn marks, you know, or holes or something. There was nothing there, and you know. But I remember then that I stumbled up the stairs and I actually collapsed on the ground because I was exhausted, and I actually fell asleep on that spot where I fell. But I don't know if this other object was later on connected with that. I don't know, but it was strange that they were doing something in my mouth, but I just couldn't see what it was. There was nothing there.
Yeah. Well, the one thing, that comes to my mind that I need to ask you is after this comes out and you're looking at it and digesting it, does your body start to feel different? Are you recalibrating? Are you going through anything or any other psychological changes now that this event has happened? Because in your heart, as sure as we're both sitting here, if what you saw is what you think you saw, it's now this foreign object is now out of you, and how do you now move on from that? How are you as as a physical being? Do you feel changes? Do uh, do you experience other things, or is it more of a normality coming back to you? Because if this is something in you that is actually implanting thoughts and so forth, you might think, or one may think, that suddenly now things are going to change. So, did you observe any of those factors occurring?
I mean, when we're talking about the implants, I just want to touch upon that is that, another thing that happened a lot of the time, we have implants in the body itself, but we also have implants in the etheric field, in the field around us, like what you call the aura,
Yes.
So there are a lot of implants that we can find in this field. Sometimes they actually come back with us from other lifetimes. So when they come back with us, and we come back, into this life, they reactivate themselves. They turn themselves on within the biology of the body, so that the body actually powers this implant when there's activity in the brain through the electrical circuitry of the body. And a lot of the time, the greys in that case, whoever put them in, they are then in a way activated, and this is one way they can track you or trace you, as well as a child. But I remember one instance though, when I was having these experiences, trying to understand them and so forth, and long before I wrote this first book. But I remember going to somebody who was a therapist, like a healer. And they were doing like a chakra type rebalancing,
Right.
And they were like saying that I didn't have a lot of energy, that they couldn't feel anything in the spine, the base of the spine, which they felt was quite unusual. But I remember when she was working along my body, like she wasn't touching me, she was just feeling, scanning, And I
Mhm.
remember she hit upon something. She said to me, "There's something in this particular part of your body, like in the abdomen, in the stomach, like where the solar plexus is, so to speak, or
Okay.
along the central nervous system." And she said, "I can feel something, but I want to look at it carefully to see what it is." She said, "I'm not sure what it is, but it's giving off a lot of energy from for the palm."
Right.
And I thought, okay, I wasn't sure at that time what she was talking about. But and then when she was there, she keeled over. Literally, she jumped back, and she was on the floor, and her eyes were watering, and she was coughing, and it took her a while to recover. And she said to me, "I don't know if you know this." She said, "But you actually have a booby trap implant inside your body." Like, and she said it's, and when she was like talking, with her guides or so forth, she was like saying they were telling her that this had been put in by the military to stop anyone interfering with what they've done to me. And she was actually quite scared because she'd not encountered that before. But I have, over the years, I have encountered other people that have these particular booby traps implanted in their energy fields. If and it's to stop basically anyone trying to interfere with these projects and programs that we've been placed in. So I don't know if you've heard of those, Michael.
I've heard a lot of different things.
Hmm.
As far as the experiencing of them, not so much, but word of mouth in recovery centers, we'll call them that.
Hmm.
When rescues are performed and so forth, and you have to move things to other areas, and they go through the medical procedure, they go through the social,
Yeah,
mental, blah, then you start to hear some of them terminologies come out. You hear fragments of things, but you only get breadcrumbs.
sure,
Because just like making a part that's being reverse engineered, everything must be separated.
sure.
So not everybody can collaborate. Not everybody knows what the next person in the next booth's doing.
And
And
it works.
if you think exactly, that's part of how they keep the hushness
Yeah,
within it. So
yeah.
that's the best way I can explain it. But now, all right, because we've already been on pretty close to 90 minutes, which is fine. Um, Going through, because I want to focus and emphasize a little bit more on the book,
Sure.
and you have, but I also want to put out enough of the juice for, hey guys, listen, Christmas is coming up. This would be a great Christmas stuffer, stocking stuffer. Check out the book. It's going to give you a lot more detail than we can ever cover here. And then, of course, me and Michael have done shows before together on other platforms, and we get very in depth in detail of some of the other things. But again, I would only talk about things like that depending upon what Michael's future is, how he's weighing on what he wants to do, if he wants to have discussions on a possible another book coming up. I don't want to over analyze or over place to keep people focused on, you know, what's most important here of how this all happened to the point in time that you released that book. Now, in doing that, what do you think was the most critical source of information that you placed within that book? Was there anything in your mind, and you are the writer of this book, so if you were to highlight anything, what would you highlight as the most critical, most important part of your writing?
Um, well, because the book is a mixture, it's a mixture between the paranormal, the abduction, but it's also, I do emphasize in the book also about my spiritual awakening within the book. And so, it's a mixture between the positive and the negative. Um, I do talk a lot about as well about complex PTSD within this type of phenomena. So, and I think that's very important to bring up as well about the mental health side of things. and now it's all integrated together with what we experience. But you know, so it is a mix of things really in this first book. But when I am going to write a second book, and that will be based around some of the things that me and Michael have discussed here, and also with Michael before in other places. And I will be talking much more about these classified, unclassified military projects.
Yeah. Well, the rejuvenation centers have anything to do with that?
Some of them, yeah.
Okay. I think that's important because, as you said, it's secret med beds and things of that. But I am hoping that you do your writing before they are, because certain sources of information that just came with, I kid you not, over the last 48 hours. I joke not on you with this. It has been suggested to me that there have been certain areas of these things being placed to help certain parties. I don't know exactly what that means. Is it for the ones most sick, or does it have something to do with the ones with most power? But that these now are being placed in the United States in certain locations due to the change that had just occurred 11/5. So this just came to me only 48 hours ago, Michael, and that's true. And it came from someone who I have a lot of respect for, who does a lot of lecturing, a lot of speaking. He's been in that realm of information for the past nearly 15 years. And he comes with a lot of credibility and a lot of resource information. So I just thought I'd throw that out at you as well, because you did bring them up earlier. And I'm hoping to God it's true, because from what I understand about these, if we make a correct diagnosis or hypothesis about them, are the terms, the new 60 will be the new 30. And that would be wonderful, because I know what it's like to be almost done with the 60s. I'm all ready for it. I really am, because you can't just do it by exercise, salad, and walking, but it takes a little bit more. And longevity is something I fight for, but that's just me. That's just me, and I enjoy it. All right, so I don't want to throw you off, but I threw that out there. What were we talking about, brother, before I so rudely brought that up? But I thought it was worth sharing with you.
We're talking about very different types of subjects that cover the whole field. It's and it's good, I think, to do that, to cover all these different topics, because they're not separated from each other. As we know, they're all interconnected together, and all of these topics are just one and the same, branching off from the same tree, so to speak. But
I do. It just blew into my head, because I think people would want to know about this awareness, being that you had eye contact with these beings, or synthetics, or androids, or hybrids, whatever they were, technology creations. Are they what we see? Do they actually resemble what we see, or that we've seen on tables where autopsies and so forth were being done?
I wouldn't say. I would say a lot of these, autopsies. I don't give much credit to anything like that, to be honest. But I think sometimes they show themselves as they are, and other times they don't. But they have their own particular reasons why they do that. Then you have screen memories. What you think you're seeing, you're not seeing, are you? You're seeing something totally different. Again, that's to do with mind control. But but the thing is, as I said, with the greys, there's so many different types of species out there, and especially with like the reptilian types, and all of them have different agendas. And sometimes one of the hardest things, I think, is not all of them are involved in the nefarious side of things. Some of them are good and are working with human beings, but sometimes it's difficult to understand who is who and what side they're on. I guess it's more a case of it's what you do, really. You know, how
Right.
you act towards another person.
Right.
So yeah, it's difficult, really. I mean, you know, I've had a lot of contact with demonic type energies, but you know that then ties in with a lot of things to do with my birth. So you know, one of the things that I discovered about myself, if I'm okay, if it's okay to say, um, is that my parents wasn't my parents. In you know what I described in my book as my mum and dad, who I thought were my mum and dad, were not my mum and dad. So I discovered that my birth was actually I was conceived through a satanic ritual, which is similar to a moonchild birth. But it was my mum, my true mum, what would be my birth mum. She was actually a witch, and my what would be my father, my dad. He was actually at the time, and he would have been in the British Special Forces, and he would have been my uncle, my mum's brother, and my mum was his wife. But what happened after my birth was that she was placed in a military mental hospital where she was never released. She had abilities as well, which were used by the military at the time, and she was taken there, and she died there. And we had me and you know, a friend of mine and an SSP veteran, Olivia James, who I worked with as well, who does a lot of work with remote viewing and so forth. You know, we encountered her at my childhood home through remote viewing when I was a young boy, and we actually at the time she was standing with me. She was quite argumentative. Olivia at the time didn't understand who she was. She was like very angry, but she was like saying, "Get away from my son, leave him alone." But at the same time, when we encountered me, I'd already altered. So I was actually, we could see me in the bed when I was a child, but there was also an altar there with me whose name was George. He was actually 4 years old, and he had been when I was placed when I was a child, and I was taken by an organization called Monarch Solutions, who are like the FBI finders. They look for children with specific bloodlines, specific abilities. There are a few factors why they choose particular children, and you know, and it's not about being special. You know, I don't describe myself as being special or chosen or anything nonsense like that, because it isn't. But but George, he was an alter of mine, and he actually was created through the Monarch project, you know,
Right.
which was the creation of the altars for many of these projects, and he had come forward as a result of the trauma that I was experiencing. So my mind disassociated and split, and George was born, so to speak, created, and George took then he then took on a lot of that pain that I was undergoing at that time by the who would have been military men, military personnel. So what happened to me was filmed. It's only recently, when I've been in contact with some of these handlers, that they've tried to create these triggers in me by having me, in a way, like toe the line. To, you know, to get them to stop me from speaking, from stopping me from pushing back on them as the adult, so to speak, asset, and to do what they want me to do. So then what they try to do is to trigger my alters to come forward and to have again to experience what they did when they were created, to undergo that trauma again. And although the trauma is still there, the trauma can be, you can move back into it again
Yeah.
and to elevate it again, to experience it again. And these alters do experience that trauma. and in many ways they have PTSD and so forth. But what they were trying to do is just then get these alters to relive those experiences when I was being tortured as that 4-year-old child. It was actually at the age of 3 years old. I had an handler who was from this particular organization called Monarch Solutions, who was around me as a child, and he taught me everything what goes into the programs about, let's just say, adult themes. So I was educated at 3 years old into many things that adults are, what adults do,
Yeah.
and in order to train me for the projects that lay ahead, and a lot of those in the the super soldier programs as the adults and then as the children. This is how they were created. They were created through these monstrous, horrific projects. But what they told me was, they were laughing about it and they were telling me, you were what happened to you. We actually filmed it, and if you want, we'll send you some pictures of that. So
Take your time, brother.
anyway, but and they said, if you go to the police, what are you going to say to them? You'll be locked away, or yeah. Anyway, so but yeah, that's how it is. But but these are the type of people that are involved in these projects. They're just sick individuals, but they're employed by these by these organizations to do this dirty work for them, and they do it, and they do it well. But they, like you said, Michael, they're using sophisticated technologies that don't officially exist. So, it's like I was saying, though, when you got the voice to skull technologies and they're speaking to you in your head, and they're speaking to you in your head, and people then assume that you're crazy. But then if you went to a court of law and you're providing evidence, and they're telling you to, as an example, they're telling you to smash an hammer into your hand to break it. But if you went to a court of law, one thing you'll probably be committed, because what they don't understand is there's technology out there like voice to skull technology that is it targets the unique frequency that you have, so it gets you then to carry out these specific commands where you have no resistance, because the mind has no firewall. There's no protection for that, regardless of what people say there is, there isn't. And they force you to do this. So then you go there and say, well, this voice told me to do it. Well, most people would think you're experiencing schizophrenia, which doesn't officially exist. It's again a throw off from these projects,
Right.
that we have, and it's technology. And so,
Not to interrupt you, but I mean, it shows the other side of how, when we have seen things over the years and people are asked, why would you commit a heinous crime like this? And it says, because the voices in my head told me to do it.
yeah,
And that was part of some of these people that started in my lab projects, that they don't bring it up. Like, where did this kid come from? What was he through? Was he in Montauk? Was he in Montauk? Where did it all come from? They don't bring these things up. Just the other day, somebody walked up to somebody in a healthcare thing up in New York City, out of nowhere, decided to. Now, they're not blaming it on any of that, but it makes me wonder, was something going on in this man's head beyond the faculties of, he just decided to do this, and he gave up his life over an order.
well, that's exactly. But that's the thing with the alters as well. The alters could be carrying out that task, and then you sometimes you got the shooters. I'm not saying it's everyone, but when you got some things that are when you look into the lives of some of these individuals, and it's not something, you know, that they would readily do, or they have really good backgrounds, and that they're suddenly you know, their personality suddenly change.
Yes.
And you know, and what you could have there, you could have one of the Delta type alters which carry out assassinations, you know.
Yeah.
And many of us are being tasked in this way as well. Many of us are being involved in them particular projects with these alters. And even as children, you know, you carry out your first kills when you're very young for these particular organizations. MI6 in the United Kingdom that are based around these projects, they get you to do this. But the alters could carry out their task, and then when the alter goes back in, and then the person that takes the body, they're being arrested for something they don't even know they've done.
Yeah, right.
You
Exactly.
know, and you've seen some of them standing in the courts of law, and when they're looking and the charges are being read out to them, it's like they're dumbfounded. You know, what's happened? It's like they've woke up in some sort of nightmare.
Yeah.
Because the alter's been recalled. It's gone back into the system, but because people don't understand of the sophistication of creating these particular type of alters, and also the fact that we have technology that doesn't officially exist because it's classified and placed under national security, you know, there's no evidence.
Right.
So again, so it looks like that person's mentally ill.
Exactly.
Suddenly they've had a psychotic episode. They've got, you know, some sort of, maybe they've had a hidden political agenda or something like this. But you know, when again with disclosure, when this technology eventually is revealed and what it is and what it's been designed to do, people will go, what about that person or this person? Could that possibly be part of the same? Did they carry out these tasks?
Yeah.
You know, and I think you'll find the answer to that will be yes.
Oh, I'm right with you, and I also believe it goes more than just the mind control. I think that the technology now has escalated to the physicality of the body, because if they can disrupt certain things to do certain things to keep us in check, in focus, and they can disrupt that, it puts us into a different framework also through the mind. So other things that get affected through you know, things that stabilize our sugar can make us very angry. If your sugar's high, you have an anger management problem. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of like one of those things. But people do claim that to be a factual truth. And I think the technology has now surpassed from having that subconscious level of where what we call, you know, some memory of recall and bleed throughs and so forth like that. But now it's also spiraling down below the you know,
I mean, don't you find it odd? I mean, you know, society has always been to some degree violent, but over the I would say over a decade or less than a decade, the violence in society has increased to, you know, to a very high level. But you know, you could say with the technology that is basically thrown at the public on a day-to-day basis, that could be part and parcel of what's increasing this intensity in people. You know, a lot of anxiety, you know, a lot of depression, but also a lot of anger. You know, because again, you know, that's another way of controlling the population. With this type of technology, this technology exists. We know it exists, and it's being used, you know, in these nefarious ways to hurt and control the public. But it's just bringing this awareness to that other part of society or the communities or the population, again, that are outside of our circles of experience and knowledge, and trying to get them to understand that, you know, you're part of this as well. You know, it's not just us children that are being brought in, you know, from birth. You know, even whilst you're in the womb, the alters are created. You know, that's another subject as well that I'll speak about at some point. But and that's quite interesting, because that's something that needs to be addressed as well.
Well, you're actually right. That's where the breakup of the bloodlines were, because the bloodlines were some of the first runners to say, let's do this. I'll create out of my family, and we will give to the agenda. But a lot of people don't want to make that connection. I had something that I needed to ask you though, from something that came up from a previous show that you and I did on a different platform. And somebody says, please ask him to be direct. They wrote to me about this, so it was a memo I have here, knowing that you were coming on today. I had to find the page I had it on. It was difficult, but I made a promise, so I will.
Can I I just want to get a tissue. Is that all right?
Yeah, please.
Cheers.
Anyway, let me do this while Michael's getting up there. I do want to say hi to Randy Rhodes. I got your question. I'm going to coming back across some of those things. I want to thank James for being in, Karen for being in, Jeannie. You guys are all rock stars. Thank you for stopping through. Ernie, who stopped through a little bit earlier, who still may be somewhere in the background. Jack Warren, the warrior, the king warrior of hello, good morning to America every day. Glad to see you guys in. Sandra, how are you? And thank you for your notes. Karen Johnson, hello to you. You're right. He's a warrior. So I was just saying some hellos to everybody out there. All right. So, what I was asked to ask you is, would you say that the 20 and back is an actually true program?
Yes.
Okay. So that was the question that I had there. There's one other on the board here, because I know you don't want to do this all night, and we'll look at this as like part one. We're going to be together again sometime. It's going to happen. Let's see here. Somebody says your book is brilliant, and that's always great to hear.
Thank you.
Couple that's horrible. Yes, of course. There's no good news. The truth is ever good news. Why are these aliens only showing themselves to small groups of people? That's not true. There's been mass events. So I'm just going to stop that there, but I'm also going to let you reply. And I'm not being rude to you, Randall. I'm not at all. That's not where it's going. If you listen to any of my shows, I brought up, I think, 7, 8, or 9 cases, probably closer to 9 cases of mass sightings. Zimbabwe, children, Phoenix Lights, the battle over Los Angeles, the whole damn city saw it happening. It made the papers. Just saying. The UFOs over the Washington. That's another one where it was seen by hundreds and hundreds of people, as well as an abduction right in New York City, where people watched a woman come through her wall window. The Manhattan abduction. So I would suggest that you look into some of those stories, and you'll find a lot more. Obviously, they have technology and power to either attack us or defend themselves if they came in peace in large numbers. Who's to say what it is all about there? Maybe it's the Galactic Federation or something networking in a different way. Some call the new network. I don't know what that's about, but it's a terminology out there, Michael, that they're talking that there is an alien race that has put themselves in the forefront of saying that Earth is a part of their structure of the Milky Way, and we are just here, and they don't care about us. So that is now something that is being spoken about. I don't know if it's somebody's narration of truth or fiction. I really don't know, but just sharing that with you. So how would you like to answer Randy, if you don't mind doing that, when he says, why are these aliens only showing themselves to small groups of people?
Well, I think, you've answered that question very well. I don't think they are, like you said. There is a lot of evidence and, stories out there where lots of other people have seen these craft in large numbers, But I think if it's only a small band of people, how many numbers are you speaking about? Is it 5? Is it 10? Is it 15 or 20? If it's a small amount of numbers, it could be. And also, what type of craft are you speaking about? Because each craft, there's different. I think there's different levels for different craft, especially the black triangular craft.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who was it?
And I think when you I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, when you had your guest on from the UK, Colin Sanders.
Yeah, Colin, great guy.
He's a friend of mine. Really good guy. But and with his black triangular, he often gets people saying it was a TR3B. And obviously it wasn't that particular craft that he see. But obviously the TR3B does it did exist, does exist. But these were originally the Greys ships. They were used by the Greys on the abduction programs. But a lot of the TR3Bs were also MyLab ships. They were used by MyLabs on the SSP programs to pick up other abductees. Yeah. And also some of them were also ships that were used to program a lot of MyLabs for for mission tasks. They were using these ships.
Weren't they the birth of the generation of stealth?
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
I mean, that's how stealth was released, but that was kind of like the narration around of TRB 1, 2, and 3, generation 1, 2, and 3.
Sure.
Of what they were, but the birth of stealth. Yeah, I've often, I meant to ask Jim Goodall about that, if he had any information that could factually back it up. But I think that's where it is, as far as that part of that idea of my mind that I had in that moment. But anyway. So one of the other things that comes up, let me look here. Have you done any off-world? Can't understand the writing, but have you been off-world?
I have. Do you mean on the projects?
Yes.
Yeah, most of us.
Missions and projects.
Yeah, most of us go off-world. I mean, the one we were talking about before, Michael, when I was on the show with you, on what I was discussing there, what I discovered when I've been involved with, a classified project that I'm still involved with now, where a lot of force, a lot of pressure is being pushed my way by the people that actually in the beginning put me into this project. The project was it was put away, basically. There was a problem with it. And the project is now at this moment in time undergoing a bidding war. So there's various the main organization that created this particular project, which is still classified to this day, which began in 1973 in the United Kingdom. It was it is now undergoing different changes. So the name what it was called when I was on it is now it's under a new name, but it is the same project, but the project is it's evolved. Yeah. And that there are various parties that are actually bidding on it now. Yeah. And we discovered as well that that these projects that we have can be sold. We never knew that before, but they can be passed on and sold in bids for the highest bidder, basically. And also a lot of the information is also stored in places like Wall Street and the London Stock Exchange. It's placed on the boards and inside the computers so that people can bid on it with secret codes. So we know that's something that's new as well.
Yeah, what Canada also comes up on into that scenario also, because if you look at the interest of the United States, and right now there's subject matter about Canada is going to become the 51. I would suggest that you look into the deeds in Canada and see that we're closer to 60. And they're just not telling you. They're letting you think you have the lower 48 plus 2. I can guarantee you that the United States interest is much larger than what they just, for some reason, they are not adding the numbers up. But if you go in and research in the Department of Deeds and in Canada, your mind will be blown on what really is going on behind. And that would be the special interest as to why probably they want to add Canada as the 51, because if they do, they can release the other documentation of what has happened and why the other informations of the other countries that are
Sure.
now under the United States are not being exposed to the public.
It's interesting information, isn't it? That's
Yes,
coming up.
very, very. You know,
It's all, again, it's all part of the bigger picture.
and there's always going to be one. At some point, we may be able to, regulate and control, but we need to react now, and we need, again, we need our energy frequencies all to be all together to do the best we can to get it to a different point. A place of greatness and importance that matters for humanity.
Yeah, I mean, when we're doing this, is the more of us that are doing these talks and that, they are that, there is a program involved now with breaking, targeting people individually on these projects, and it doesn't necessarily it's not meant to just say people on the projects. It's people that are involved, like yourself, Michael, in different ways. We're all involved. We're all trying to work together as a collective to achieve the same task. But these, the powers that be, they are attacking a lot of the groups now that are coming together with disclosure. So because they want again, to divide and conquer, to separate. You don't need no more to have a physical person going into these groups like you did in the 1950s and 60s to, to spy, to gather intelligence, and to create those psychological, tactics to break up the groups. So,
right.
They use technology now to do that.
Yeah.
And so, again, we have the targeting of people in these groups that are being targeted. You have the suicide programming and stuff like this, or the targeting you to self-harm and that. Although those things are there, you often find these are actually, when you look into your records in the SSP and that, if you can obtain any information whatsoever, you often find that each of those involved in these projects, they will have the same type of information coming out, that how if you speak out, certain altars as well can cause you harm. And I've had that, where I've had altars come up that basically are trying to throw me in front of a lorry.
Right.
It's only when where I can take control of,
it's like kind of like
body.
The new Men in Black intelligence scenario. We no longer have to knock on your door. We can get to you right through your own head.
Sure. I mean, as I said before, there's hardly any. I mean, the worrying thing about all this is how easy it is to gain access to us using technology, and it is so easy to do it once you know how. A lot of the programmers, when they program in a specific way using symbols and codes and different things, and they're using they actually accessing a deeper level of the mind that a lot of civilian therapists and hypnotherapists and other types of therapists, psychiatrists, and that don't even know exists. And they don't understand how to break that programming. A lot of the time, if they try, they actually can do more harm than good. So it is worrying when you think how easy it is for a human being to be controlled. And it's very easy once you know how, and they do know how, and it works.
Yeah.
Hey,
there's something I need some help on from you. This is for that guy, Randy, and he's a friend of mine. I know he's only trying to do the right thing. He likes to look into things he's unaware of. A military scenario base. It was called what? Brentwater?
In the UK.
Yes. That was one of the American, the night before Christmas horror story of the alien or UFO encounters. That was one of the biggest. So that's another you could consider classified military sighting, mass sighting of sorts. There was a lot of men in the field that night observing, seeing, and it didn't happen just once. So check also into that. I just thought that would be something of case of interest because it's come across as really good information for anybody who is doing this now. And I know Randy's focusing his life on this direction and has been working really hard to do it. Glad to have you aboard in the war. That's all I'm going to say. Glad to have you aboard.
That was a huge one, wasn't it? That was a huge case.
Yeah, Brentwaters, yeah, most definitely. It was one of the very first. It was like the Roswell of other Brentwater. And and has not almost every country had one of these occurrences. To me, it's almost like there was a purposeful, intentional crashings, maybe, where these things, synthetics of whatever, just take a command and order and do it. Maybe it was to say, okay, you guys are doing what you're supposed to. We're going to give you this now, and we're going to give you technology somehow. Or maybe we'll just hand it to you somehow. I mean, who's to say, who's to know? But there's a lot of stories out there. You have the Contact, Serpo. There's so many things that people can look into that bring a lot to the table. But I think the most important thing that was given to me by Miss Paula Harris, who does a lot of work over in your side of the world, because America pretty much barred her in the zone of America. And she's done fascinating work with talking with some of the most important people on the planet that ever were part of the disclosure, like Jacques Vallée, Hynek, and she worked right next to these people, right next to them. To be a fly on the wall in the room when they were having discussions together, I could only imagine how incredible that was. Scientific information, reverse engineering products being handed out. We know that we have a scenario going on. And right now, over America, we're seeing a lot of drone sightings. From what I understand, it's called, and I use the terminology of, hold on one second, I don't want to misquote myself, especially when it's my terminology of a chapter that I'm doing. Let me grab this up real quick. It's easy. It's just, I need to grab it up. The Project Spider something, I can't remember, but I'll tell you why that they are doing what they are doing. And I think it's of great importance. None of my devices are working adequately the last few days. Everything's kind of like on a, running in slow mode. So technology, it really isn't so great. The Project Sky Spiders. So why are we seeing them over a lot of our military bases, and not just in America? It's only because America is talking about it, just like the balloon, the days of the balloons, when that stuff was occurring. It's because now there's technology, just like a satellite message, that satellites, when you do a quick text to somebody or use messenger service to send a note off to somebody, it can infiltrate anything. And what they are trying to do is create a block grid, so that anything trying to come in that cannot be observed from the eye, because of the technologies are so highly sophisticated that are being used. They're not ours, and they know they're not ours. It's to block the grid of where certain things are, where certain things are laying underground. So that is how the information's come back to me on that part of what the drone scenario is. It's not that we're being invaded by China. It's us trying to protect certain areas of grids, because they are detecting readings of intelligent somethings that we can't observe, just like a message. So if you say that this can't be possible, ask yourself how I can send you a text 5,000 miles away and you have it in less than 3 seconds.
Exactly.
Because it exists. So that's what the drones are doing. They're trying to create sophisticated blockages, kind of like if you wanted to protect the dome of the earth, or the crown of the earth, through plasma fields. We know the technologies exist, and I think that's what the military is trying to accomplish right now, because I would say the good side of the military, trying to protect our assets.
Yeah, I see that on your page earlier on with I think it was the black drones, wasn't it? You said Spider a spider formation, isn't it? Something like that.
Well, when you look up into the sky and you see them all, they look like a bunch of spiders dancing in the sky. And I thought to myself, so I was doing some research on it, and I was actually 3 days ago pulled into a very close friend of mine in the military that who's found out that his life is going to become shorter. And he decided to reach out to all of the people that he felt was important to carry on his work for him. And we sat in approximately a 3 to 3.5 hour briefing of his materials, of his life's work, the engagements through the military, and some other. Just that for right now. Just that for right now. More will come. He's preparing to do a full disclosure on what he has, worked within, and things that he had to, perform, how all those things are. The classified work, the classified organizations like Calypso. Anyway, there's a bunch of them. And I didn't expect it when it happened, and I was grateful to hear from him. I'm like, hey, brother, what's up? I want you to be somewhere with me, and then I want to come onto your platform, and I want to do this formally, but I also want to make sure that several other formats have at least recordings, or I do something with them so it all happens at one time. So I'm being chosen to be part of the asset of disclosure under his guidance. And I call him the alien, the ghost scientist, who's worked with very remarkable people, also like Paula Harris did, but of a different networking. Sure. And he also discussed 15 to 16 hours of talking to very special people that are not so very special that we think who they are, but are under control of the disillusional information of the disinformation. So there are plants that are out there that are infiltrating under a false representation of what they are truly there for. And it's happening, and it's a disgrace in the community, but he disclosed a lot of things. And again, I can only refer to him as who I said who he was, and I've done shows with him before in the past, but he's now going to come on camera. Again, he's been given more than horrific news of his because he's ill, and he says now's his time. He's going to blow it all the way. He's been a whistleblower for 11 or 12 years already. They want to make a movie about him. They wanted him to write books, and he said he never wanted any of that. He's just wants now to do the proper thing for humanity. I don't know how he will guide, but I'll take his guidance to do whatever I can pick up on where he leaves off. Sure. To, give the information or have him on and continue his work.
Continue his legacy.
Yes. Yes, the same as I do for like Art Bell when I do an Art Bell show, and people say, why are you doing an Art Bell show? It's because he is a legacy. I mean, where did he not have a show? Where did he not have people with credentials like Bud Hopkins and Stanton Friedman and the warriors who, that stood up, that opened the door for all of us to be able to, these were the heroes, and they were the closest ones to the information of the time. I mean, what better resource? What a better resource in Art Bell for night after night after night after night after night, no matter what the topic or the subject matter of the title of the show, he had on incredible people.
Well, that's he was consistent, wasn't he, in what he did?
Yes, he was. Most consistent out of everybody.
Very dedicated to his cause.
Yes.
Of bringing the information out. And like you said, a lot of these people were some of the first to come out and start to talk about, Bud Hopkins, and he brought in Dr. John Edward Mack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Another one. I mean, he was, he went out on a limb, didn't he? Because of he was told he'd lose his titles if
Of course.
he pursued, you know, that line of work.
Yeah, the same type of mystery that where your information lies.
I mean, the thing is, I mean, I spoke about Dr. John Edward Mack in my book, but the only thing I would say about him is that he had an agenda as well, though, in regards to how he presented some of his information. Because what you'd find with him as he went through it, he had his own ideology, his own belief, and his own, you know, mindset about things. And what he would often do is he would often choose abductees or contactees that had the same ideology, the same belief systems as himself, and he would then remove from his investigations and his research and his, you know, his work with abductees. He would sort through those, and he would only take those a lot of the time who he believed would have positive, who seemed to have positive experiences with the ETs, and he would throw off the ones that had the negative ones, because he was trying to present the world with his vision of what he believed, you know, in the way the world should be like. And to
Yeah.
me, that's fine. But to me, though, that's not that's not being truthful. You
Well,
know,
you're
that means
absolutely correct. You're
you got
absolutely
your own, because you got your own agenda. I mean, of course you got good things and you got bad things, but you can't just have one without the other, because both of them come together. And some people, you know, some investigators, researchers, and that, they only look at one element of it. I mean, I have a lot of bad stuff happen to me, but I always make sure to emphasize that there is good out there as well. You know, there are positive ETs out there, and there are people within these agendas as well, within these groups and projects, that are actually sometimes working, you know, in a way like a double spy. They're working it through the organizations they're working with. It seems like they're doing nefarious things, but on the other hand, they're actually working for our side.
yeah.
And so it's a bit like that. But if you're just taking, you know, like what I call the love and light communities, you know, they're just not real. You know, they emphasize just on the light when you got a lot of the dark stuff as well. And I think you'll find it's going to come through the darker elements of these projects that bring in disclosure, and not the other side of it.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
other side,
I think that's where we're at also right now.
the, the other side will come into it when the darker stuff is exposed. Then the much more, you know, positive and lighter stuff will have its place, because that's what we're doing. We're trying to destroy the foundations that they've built up in order to bring in the positive. You know, because, you know, we're on these projects and we're all doing our things to, you know, to expose it, to bring it to, you know, to bring it out there, to so that it's recognized as not just being what some people think to be a conspiracy theory, you know, but it's based on actual facts, with actual proof that can be eventually shown to the world. And obviously we want from that, we want to build something good from it, and these people will have their place, you know. I mean, I go through this trauma, like you just see when I was talking about these particular things that happened to me, where a lot of that come up with that emotion and that PTSD, and things like that. But in one way, it's a good thing in some ways, because every time I think they do something bad to me, it gives me an opportunity to write about it, and to create a more positive platform for it, where I can expose what they're doing. Then I can do something. I can turn that negative around into a positive, and then, you know, this is another way that we can expose them.
Yeah, I agree totally. I'm just looking at some of the comments here. Oh, okay. We got a hi, Mike. Hey, Rocco. I'm so happy to see you finally made it into one. I'm saying that jokingly. I know you will be here when you can. I appreciate you. Someone I grew up with. I mean, from the youngest of age, and it's just one of those things. There's not many of them left around me. I'm very appreciative. You made it in, brother. The book is titled "Left at the East Gate at by Peter Robbins and Mike Glover. The book is titled Left. Okay, that is in something about it sounds familiar. I'm not sure if you can provide any more information to that. Are we talking ufology or disclosure? Please respond back and advise. I'd appreciate it. Larry Warren was 19 and based at Brentwaters. Okay, Suffolk. Gotcha. Okay. There was a lot of people there, even some people that took notes that touched the ship. Anyway, if you look into that, you'll find a lot more of that out. James Wigington, not sure. They were ETs or maybe time travelers, probably referencing something we were talking about. And sometimes when you don't give enough back to the audience a little bit, it's hard to say. And then someone that you know said, don't say it. Like Sandra. Sandra. I think you know who that is. I don't know what that reference is, but again,
tell her I'm not going to say what I know what she means.
Don't say it.
Yeah,
I'm sure we probably have talked. Well, I'm sure we didn't talk about everything, but I know that you and I have interjected a couple times prior to this, and did almost an open full disclosure of information that people probably had no idea even existed. And we managed to stay online, and the show is still out there, from what I understand, which is actually fascinating. Even if only one ear hears it here and there,
sure,
it could still spiral and go somewhere. Not because you or I need that to happen, but because people need it to happen for them. You know, and so I would advise anybody, if you know who Barb Horn Hartman is. We were on one of her Bigfoot Project shows, and the dialect was this, and it was pretty wild. It was pretty magnificent, but pretty wild, because it gave us the opportunity to really PowerPoint a lot of features and structures of what this constituent and friend of mine, Michael, and I, are well aware of. In the world. I hope today that you gained a lot of information. I'm going to ask you, Michael, do you think you'll ever make it back on to What's in the Skies? I would love to see us go into more detail at some point. I know the holidays are up. I'm not going to hold you to anything. We can plan something.
Let's do that. Future. I mean, I was going to say though as well, when sometimes, a lot of, we obviously, when we're presenting this information, we can get criticism for it, because people want proof. But this is the reason though why it's secret, and why we say it's secret, and this is the reason why we're trying to disclose it, obviously, to give this proof through this disclosure, through the powers that be that hold that information a lot of the time from us, with physical evidence, but I think in some ways I don't really rise to that occasion when somebody is, critical of what I say, because, that's their opinion as well. But I think it's in a way, even if someone's critical of it and they're talking about it, the fact that they're talking about it again, it's going out there,
Yeah, I'm looking for some of my redaction papers. Do you see what the Freedom of Information is doing now? I mean, it's nuts. They did this to try to curb us from the turn of turning into the driveway and actually being able to open up the mailbox and take out what we want. But they're making these things so unaffordable now. And if you don't pay them for it after they decide how much to charge you, because they won't give a cost, you'll receive it in the mail after you accept the certified mail of what they're sending to you, even if the entirety of the pages only have one word left on them, and you're paying $1,000 a sheet now for a Xerox.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy.
It's their way of pushing back there also now. So what is supposed to work for us there is failing us also. So I do have some other things that I need to do today. I'd love being on with you for another 3 hours if we could. I can't. It's impossible for me.
Sure.
I wanted to ask you something, but I lost train of thought on it. Come on, old man. Come on, old man.
I do that all the time. Don't worry.
Yeah, I think it's part of the system of a down that comes after suffering of issues of things. But yeah, I'm sorry, I lost thought of that. But somebody said yes, yes. No, they said one yes. No, they did say yes, yes. More of Michael, and then Karen says yes. Michael Cameron is amazing. You have a lot of women followers. You dog you.
Karen's my best friend in the
Oh,
UK, and she's,
nice to meet you, Karen. Nice to meet you.
She's done a lot in regards to, helping me, with my PTSD, but also when I was having a hard time with somebody, and she was there in my corner all the way. She's like a really good friend of mine, and I really appreciate her.
I find myself honestly having more women friends than I've ever had, men friends. That's true.
I get
and I
on
don't
better
know
with
why.
women, I get on better with women.
And I've always supported them. I really have. When we were going through the turmoils, and a lot of things came up about degrading women, and they're not the parents, they're just the birthing people and stuff. And I was like, I've always supported women's rights and the fact that women should make just as much as a gentleman, and without a doubt, equal is equal. And without it, there's no uniformity. It's not ever going to be proper. So I always, as an outreach service on my platform, when the most serious times were in the events at play, I was trying to do anything I could to promote equal fairness to women businesses, men business, all through my locale of area. I always made mention to these people. I didn't care what they owned. I didn't make judgment. All I cared about was helping them flourish and stay above the water, to stay into the future, to be sustainable on their own, to get back or build in a different direction if it was necessary. So I get where you're at, and maybe that's why I have a lot of young ladies that come on more than men. Man, yeah, whatever, both the same. I can tell the difference.
But the thing is, women over the, as you know, women over the decades and that, they've been suppressed, and a lot of the people that we know in history, men that had these great achievements. Now, when we can look back into their histories, we can see that it was actually the woman that was the person who had that knowledge, but the man, because of the times, presented that information to the world. The man got the Nobel Peace Prizes, or and got these awards within these industries, but it was actually the woman or women that were actually the people that were achieving these these things. And I think if that's still that part of history needs to be changed, and the women that were that were, say, for instance, in a way like Einstein, it's believed that Einstein's wife was actually the one who was a mathematician, but because of the times, the little lady, as they say, she had to stand back because of men's stupidity and ignorance within those times, when in actual fact she should be coming forward, and she should be the one with those awards and be acknowledged. And I think Einstein was a mathematician, and he understood a lot of things, but I think it was his wife that was the genius.
And you know what? We find that out too with presidents of the United States, that the wives had just as much, intelligence and voice. But again, always call them the secondaries. And that's what they do, And maybe, in fact, they were the Madam Presidents already of the past. That kept us somehow and saved us. President Reagan's wife was phenomenal. She knew in advance things, help the children, No Child Left Behind acts, all these types of things. No things that nobody else was thinking about. Same with Trump, his wife. Beautiful lady, without a doubt. But let's take that out of the equation. She's also brilliant. And so's Trump's son. When you can speak all these different tongues, and, you're educated in this, that, and the other, you're groomed a certain way for a certain purpose. And certain people do that if they are attached to their child that way. That's why a lot of people choose things for their children. Maybe not always in the, where everybody would agree to, because we see pageants and things, and, putting makeup on children that are, come on, it's a little too soon. You shouldn't go that. But, again, women do hold the priority that have been left behind.
Sure. I mean,
and they are the portals of life.
I know. I mean, I got some of my friends like Nancy, if she's in the chat room, and Karen and Sandra, they're people that give me a lot of strength and help me, a lot. And I would be lost without them. I'm really grateful that I have them in as part of my life.
I totally understand it, and I have nothing but respect for where you're coming from and the people that surround you. I mean, we all need that. We really do. And I'm happy to know that you have a foundation, a solid foundation around you that's helping that balance and everything to stay in check in good ways.
Yeah, I mean, they're for me, they're my treasures. I wouldn't, I won't be without them. I'm lucky to know them and have them in my life. So that they're some of my blessings.
Yes. Can't ask for any better ones than that. But like I said, I got to take off. It's been a wonderful show with you. We got to answer some questions. There is a couple more comments here. One was well said. James says women do more reading, studying, and putting up. And that's true, especially if you look at the last 4 years of what's been going on surrounding us. Just unbelievable strength of women. And, it doesn't matter who they are. They're all beautiful when they're working for humanity. Then there, Jana, I don't know who you are. Nice to meet you. Yes, it's the achievements of women and how historically been unsuppressed or something like that. I'm not sure. I'm having a very hard time with my eye. Underrepresented, I think, is what it says, insignificantly and documented. Exactly correct. Exactly correct. Mm. The ones that get the attention are the worst world leaders or examples of humanity in many ways. I mean, you can look into Sister Teresa, you can look into Hillary Clinton. Go whichever direction you want. You'll come back to me the same way. I guarantee you. It's just how the system works. If you market good, you can implant the evil. And then it takes over and it runs rampant. So, we've talked about a lot of that here, just in different subject matters of different ways. But I thank you, brother. I do. I think you're great.
You, Michael.
I know you're going to keep in touch with me, but I want to wish you a very happy holiday. I know we're going to be celebrating one here in America. I'm sure you're going to be kicking it over there. I hope you can sit back with some of your friends there who give you support, have some wine, just chill through the system of the holiday and be all you can be. And somebody says thank you both. So if they pop up, I try to see just in case there's any important messages for you. But do what you can to stay in touch. And if you truly want to go back to where we were several months ago, just let me know. Let me know when your mind's ready and when you're healed enough inside to feel strong enough to maybe where you and I can possibly share some directional information that way.
Sure, let's do that. We'll set something up.
All right. I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Thank you, everybody. This is the Oracle Talk Radio Network, America Disclosing Uncensored. This was What's in the Skies with Michael Kameron. Please put his book on your holiday list. It'll make for a great stocking stuffer. Excuse me. It really will. And if you've seen any of my previous other guests, there's a lot of great books out there. Everybody's a rock star who's in the fight for disclosure. We appreciate y'all. I appreciate y'all. Please like and share. This is a free service. It costs me money to come to you out of my own pocket. I ask for nothing. And that's mainly what happens. Even I want you to always remember this too, for the book authors out there. A lot of people just don't read anymore. Books are starting to become obsolete. A lot of people, I think you will see in the future, go more to the direction as we get better protection of podcasting and doing independent shows for citizen protection of journalism, because we are the truthers and we are the disclosure. Peace out, America. I love you. I'll see you again probably tomorrow. Take care.